All right, I have here another engineer task, and I will admit right off the bat with this one, this was in the doctrine when I was a new engineer, but we never actually did it. We would discuss it and maybe do it on a whiteboard, but we never went out and practice it in the field because at the time I was coming in, there was already talk about mines being phased out, the anti-personnel mines being phased out. This was before they did the anti-personnel mine ban in the mid-90s. So we would talk about this, but we didn't actually do it because we figured it was kind of useless to do it beyond just informational. And I have not studied anything on this in well over 20 years, if not close to 30 years. But this video is going to be on landmine clusters. I'm going to teach you on the clusters before I do a video on the specifics of a cluster row minefield. Now, according to US doctrine, and this is from manuals from the mid-90s because this stuff has been eliminated from the newer manuals I have come across. In a minefield cluster, you have a maximum of 5 mines. Of those, a maximum of 1 of them can be an anti-tank mine, so the other 4 mines in the cluster are supposed to be anti-personnel. Now, the base mine in the cluster has to be easy to detect. So it's supposed to be metallic, like an M15. And according to US doctrine, and this is only allowed in Korea, or was only allowed in Korea, if you're doing landmine clusters and you do not have anti-tank mines in that cluster, the base mine that you're going to go off of has to be the largest metallic anti-personnel mine that's going to be in that cluster, which would be an M16 series Bouncing Betty. Now, the enemy's coming from this direction. According to doctrine, the mines are supposed to be laid in the cluster, a semicircle around it, maximum of 2 meters from your base mine. So you can't put the mines on that 2 meter mark going all the way around or within 2 meters. Now, sympathetic detonation that I was able to come across looking inside the manual for US anti-personnel mines in proximity to an M15 is if the mine is buried, the closest you can get that anti-personnel mine, that M16, that M14, M26, but you're never going to see one because those were gotten rid of from the inventory because they were a disaster and they were extremely dangerous to the person putting them in. The closest they could get put in was 1.5 meters. So all this in here was a danger zone. And that's a max of 1.5 meters from that mine. So that means your anti-personnel mines that you're going to be putting in are in this little strip up here, 1.5 feet wide, 18 inches. You could put them closer, but just be aware it's going to detonate when this detonates. Now, according to US doctrine, you can only put 1, maximum of 1 tripwire activated anti-personnel mine in each landmine cluster. And that landmine has to be on the front edge of the enemy side. It cannot be back here. So let's say we got our M16, we locate it 2 meters in front of the mine, and we have our tripwires going out U-shaped or V-shaped off to the side. The maximum that the tripwires go, if I remember correctly, is supposed to be 5 meters. So now we have an M16 here. We can still put in 4 M14s or comparable pressure activated toe popper style mines. Examples: the M14 from the US, the Type 72 from the Chinese, the PMN series from the Russians, PMD series from the Russians, so on and so forth. The VS50, the TS50 from the Italians. You got the idea of type. So we can put in 4 more mines. And these have to be blast type. So we could go, say, 1 meter out. Put an M14 here. Put another one out here. Let's say 1.5 meters. We can still put in 2 more. Put another one out here. And we can still put in 1 more. Let's say we put it over here. Now, when this gets recorded on the minefield record for each one of these clusters, you will get an azimuth from this base mine to each mine with the distance from the center point of this mine, going to each one in each cluster. Now, according to U.S. safety doctrine, when you are arming the clusters here, only 1 person is allowed up on the cluster to arm the mines. So what you'll do, you may have a team that will go through, place the mine on the ground, have a little marker flag next to it. You'll have the hole ready for up here on the M16. You'll probably have the stakes in, the tripwire strung back, not tied into the mine, but you'll have it tied off to, say, a stick or something up here so that the soldier will be able to find it. He then goes through, arms the mines going from enemy to friendly, and he'll do all these in the outside of the cluster first before he arms the base mine in the cluster and camouflages it, and then he travels that safe lane going straight back and then follows that out. Now, I did do a check on threat doctrine, which is typically based off old Soviet or current Russian doctrine. Even according to current Russian doctrine, they do not allow for the mixing of mines in the same row, so they do not allow for landmine clusters. At least according to current known doctrine. That may have changed because of fighting in Ukraine. But according to Russian doctrine, each row has to be one particular type of mine, as in your Alpha row anti-tank, your Bravo row anti-personnel, your Charlie row anti-tank. You know, it has to be the same type going across. But inside that row, you can mix. So in an anti-tank row, you could have TM62Ms, you could have TM57s, TM44s, as long as they are all anti-tank mines in that row. If it's an anti-personnel mine inside that row, it has to be only anti-personnel mines, and it can be mixed, I believe. I couldn't find anything that said otherwise in the doctrines that I came across. So you could have in there PMN2s along with OZM 72s. And then maybe on the flanks you might have a couple Palm Zs in there because of the terrain. So, double checking, see if I got anything else written on the notes here for importance. The last note that I have is, if any of the mines have an anti-handling device, for safety reasons, you are supposed to arm the mine first. That way, in case you get chased out of the minefield, at least the mine itself is armed. And then you would go through and arm the anti-handling device, or AHD, that is on that mine, and then continue with camouflaging the mine. That's what I got for the basics on mine clusters. I will now get set up and I will do a video on the basics of a cluster row minefield. Now, for all of my engineer brothers in the Patriot Militia movements, always remember SAM.